All right, welcome back to another episode of Into the Valley, where today we will be looking back on Charlton's 1-1 draw at Pride Park, as well as the unfortunate Deepdale 2-0. Yeah, I think first of all, we were hoping to get a video out midweek. Unfortunately, the German internet where you were was not playing ball, so we weren't able to get it out. But we're going to start the video just having a quick kind of chat over that game. So yeah, let's start on that one then. So the Derby midweek game.
Yeah, so obviously I was able to sort of stream it over there. To be honest, I think overall end of the game 1-1 felt like a fair result. I think it'd be rude not to talk about the goal. To be fair, did feel like I was watching Brazil in red and white. But was yeah, that goal was the highlight of the game for us. We created a few other good opportunities in the game, but generally we dominated. In large parts, we dominated that first half, I would say, although it was a bit back and forward. The goal, obviously, was the big game changer in that first half. Second half, Derby definitely came on strong and dominated us. So that's where I think actually the draw is probably a fair.
Yeah, and I think it was a strange game because I think we probably. I think we narrowed the first half in regards to they didn't really have any chances. We had a couple of opportunities. I think TC cutting down the wing got a kind of whipped shot across, which I don't think it was too dangerous, but
Yeah.
it was a bit of a chance. As you say, the goal, yeah, stunning. I mean, I think my main one on that was it started with filth as well. The touchdown from Kelman,
Yeah, that was
it was
disgusting.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And then I think we've actually seen as well. I mean, in that goal, it highlighted it massively. But I think over the last few games, we have started to see passages of play maybe that are starting to teeter towards a little bit more creative,
Yeah.
kind of bit quicker on passing. I still feel like it's moments in games than it is kind of our identity.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's something we'll start to see as the season goes on, because I think at that point, I felt when that goal went in, we could really push on. And if we kept if we could just up that one next level, and especially as a team that normally starts dominating towards the end of games,
Yeah.
I felt really confident at that point. Going into the second half, I actually felt this is a game where we can actually really push on. And I'm not saying we're going to have what we did at Blackburn, but I felt we could definitely hold it and maybe catch them on the break.
I think what would have happened, I think that Derby would have gone in at half time. The manager would have said, right, we need to up this. We're at home, midweeker. And that's exactly what happened, I think. They came out second half. They were a lot stronger. They really came onto us. And I think that made it hard for us to get onto the ball because they were constantly sort of trying to push us back. And then I think the goal for them ultimately just came from them grinding us down over time. I think the amount of times we were having to head the ball away and defend our box, it eventually just obviously popped back into the box and they obviously tucked the header away. But we saw a couple of good saves from Kaminsky in the game.
Yeah, and I thought it was
The-
probably the one there he's been called on
yeah,
the most. And I think there was the one-on-one
well,
he had, which
yeah.
I think the player probably should have
He
scored.
should
But
have.
still,
He
really
should have.
good save because
But also, they're the moments, actually, when you have a keeper that's as good as him in the sticks, they're the moments that actually keep you in games. Because we could have ultimately lost the game if he wasn't on it.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's why you bring a keeper of his quality into the side. And I think that's probably what Jones has sort of highlighted after the game as well, that, that sort of save is from that top tier of sort of keeping level.
Yeah, and I think Jones probably hit the nail on the end of the head as well, which is at the end of the day, any away game where you're coming away with points, unless you've really dominated and you've lost or you've really scraped to win or whatever. But generally speaking, a point away is good.
Especially like midweek, sort of up north.
Yeah, midweek where also it is still beginning of the season where players aren't. I think they're fit now, but they're not completely into the season, 20 games in fit. And
3-day turnaround.
yeah, I think it's the first one where we've had game midweek and then another game on the weekend.
Yeah.
And I think we really saw that second half. I thought we looked quite leggy at points. I think Derby played really well, and I think there's probably, if I was a Derby fan, I'd probably look at that second half and think
We
they
could have won
they
that.
probably could have gone on to win it, albeit actually in the game.
We had a few chances.
We probably, as I thought we were pretty, I wouldn't say we were poor second half. I think we were playing a tactic of dropping very deep.
Yeah.
It reminded me almost of when we went down to 10 against Millwall, where we just dropped really deep, really structured. And I thought the first sign that, okay, it feels like maybe a goal's coming and we're switching off a bit was when they broke through, had the one-on-one, and then the goal came soon after. And I think with it, we as I say, I think it was at that point in the game where I felt actually a point's not a bad.
I was happy with the point at the end of the game. I mean, there were a couple of chances. I think Nibs had one he sliced over from close range, and then Doherty had one that was sort of blocked and went just past the post.
We probably in the final stages looked.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say we necessarily looked like a team that were going to score.
We had
a couple of chances.
That would have potentially been a bit of a sort of snatch and grab, wouldn't it?
And we've had it against us.
Yeah, we have.
Season, so look, I think hit the nail on the head. It's a draw is a very good result.
I was
and
happy
I
with
think
us.
it's a pretty fair result,
Mm.
and I think when you actually cap it off with the Blackburn result, then that points kind of per game at that point.
You're building up a little bit.
Yeah, we I think we're pretty happy. So yeah, overall, good game.
Yeah.
I thought some really promising performances in there as well from a few players.
Yeah.
Bree obviously once again just going kind of strength to strength.
Yeah.
And it felt like going into the next game that it was going to always be a tough game against Preston. They're in good form, which at the beginning of the season I don't think either of us particularly would have assumed or guessed. But yeah, it felt like a game that was probably going to be made. It was going to be very close quarters. It was going to be a chance taken. And in all honesty, let's go into first half. I don't feel probably against first or second half.
We didn't offer much at all, to be honest. I think the one thing that is positive still for me is that we do limit teams. I know that they obviously got 2 goals in the game. One was a deflected goal, obviously, and the other one was us probably pushing forward and just being a bit more open at the back towards the end of the game. I did feel like in that first half we did still limit them to long range efforts, and I think that if you look at it, they had in the first half they had a couple of strikes, but they were from distance, not really troubling the keeper massively. I think second half was when the game sort of really turned a little bit more and we started to come under siege.
Yeah, the first half was very cagey. They looked like the in control team. They looked like the better team, but we were doing what we do well. Very strong defensive resilience.
Yeah.
And there wasn't really much. I think if you probably looked at the highlight reels of the first half, there was very little that we could probably look at and say there was to talk about. I think second half is where I felt realistically again. I felt we. Similar to the Derby game, I thought we looked a little bit leggy. We lost a bit of our, and that probably goes across the whole game. I thought we lost a little bit of our identity in that game, and I found it quite strange actually, because after the game, I thought it was going to be a performance that Jones would highlight with a bit more criticism, and I didn't feel like he did.
Well, I feel like with Jones, I think because we've started pretty well, I think he talks about it all the time. And he talks about don't get too high, don't get too low. And I think we've lost. And at the end of the day, it wasn't our best game by a mile. I think probably that and the QPR game were the two that we probably looked the.
And I think we looked worse in the Preston.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that is, as I say, to both those games, we're not talking about, I think if you take it for the team, you can go, oh God, yeah, you got dominated by QPR. You got
But look where QPR now. They've started going. I think they're on a 6 or 5 game unbeaten streak. They're up to like 7th or 8th in the league. So although at the time when we played QPR, they'd just been tanked by commentary, I think. But since then they've built it back up.
It's kind of their turning point.
Yeah, exactly. They've spun it around. And at the end of the day, like all of the clubs we play are going to be tough to play against. Preston North End, they weren't a team that I had massively tipped to be up the top this year, but they're well managed, they're well coached. I mean, Heckingbottom's a good manager, and they've got quality players in that team as well. So it's not as if we're losing to a team that's like going to be.
And I do think with them, I still don't think looking at them, I'm not playing them thinking, okay, this is a promotion winning team. I think realistically, I think they would probably drop off and be mid table.
Yeah,
I don't think, as I say, once again as well, they were quite wasteful with chances against us. They had quite a few opportunities where they got into good positions, but like smashed it over the bar or whatever it might be. I think they're going through a very strong run of form where stuff is just kind of
momentum.
Yeah, momentum and everything like that. And as I say, there was parts of their game, and especially I think it was in Dobbin.
Yeah, he's a good player.
He's a really good player with
good.
awful end product.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know if that's normal for him, but I thought he was turning up
Dangerous though.
Yeah, very dangerous. And that second half, obviously, the real side of it was I felt it was a game we were either going to draw 0-0, get very lucky and get kind of a breakaway goal or something. But I think actually where I probably more saw it going, which was eventually they were probably going to break us down, and no other than
Thierry.
Thierry. Yeah.
I think I noticed during the game, like, because obviously when he scored the goal, he was shushing the Charlton fans, and he was obviously quite animated with it. I I I do feel that the booing from the Charlton fans was a little bit harsh. I mean, he left the club,
Mm,
but he left the club to technically to go to obviously a club that could pay him more money. That's
mm,
what I think the
mm.
prime reason he left. And he did, to be fair, when he was at Charlton, he did put his all in. He played well for us, and he was quite a key player a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So booing him just gives him that fire in his belly to get that goal. And I'm not saying that he wouldn't necessarily still have scored. Um, but even his interview after the game, he was kind of saying like, "I've got nothing but respect
Mm.
for Charlton." He obviously was disappointed himself with it, and that probably did fire him up. I do think it did.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to with ex-players because we seem to have this curse of every ex-player who's ever played for us.
Again,
Macaulay Bonds, who is just
yeah.
terrible.
But certain players deserve, in a way, deserve the stick. Like if Lord Taylor ever came back to the
Yeah,
Valley,
yeah,
he'd get pelted.
I'm with you. I don't understand it was small because I
Mm.
think he gave us a lot.
Yeah.
We signed him on a free, I'm pretty sure at the time. We gave him a lot, he gave us a lot. We shook hands, we went separate ways. Understandably, to some extent, why he went separate ways, albeit it's not necessarily what I thought was the right decision at the time. But I don't really have any bad feelings, and I don't.
I think as a Charlton fan, you'd argue that's at best a sideways move for us. Like
Mm,
we see our Charlton would see ourselves up there with Preston, to
mm.
be fair. But like we're saying, talking about sort of a personality in the game. Like he was never he was good for us. So,
Yeah.
but you do get a little bit. I mean, it's a part of the sort of theatre of football, isn't it?
I think that's what it
still-
kind of comes down
But the
to.
players definitely, when they get pelted or booed throughout the game, it does fire them up. I'm sure.
Well, I think it can go one of two ways. It can either really put the pressure on them and they don't have a good game, or
Yeah.
they can get
Which, to
behind
be
that.
fair, at the start, he was putting a few balls over the top and
Well, I
missing
think
his
we
passes.
knew how to play against him, and what you will always say about Thierry is he. I think he thrives when it's almost everything's going 100 mile an hour.
Yeah,
I think when you actually have to rely on him to have the composure or make the
yeah.
decision and push out and then really curl a shot, he's not that effective.
Well,
Whereas I think he that
Mm.
chaos of running at a defender, cutting in, not really knowing what's going to happen next, that's where he's at his best.
But also, the goal that he scored, it was one that we've seen many times when he's been at Charlton, where he's just lashed it. He's hitting it hard.
Mm.
And obviously, we've got unlucky because obviously Ramsey sort of
Massive
forced it.
deflection, yeah.
It's gone over the top, and even Jones couldn't get to it because it had looped up.
Mm.
But they were what we saw from him regularly was he'd cut inside or be in the box and lash it hard into to try and score. And obviously, it did end up in the back of the net. But I do feel that goal was coming. There'd been a few chances. That boy, I can't remember his name now, that he had that header from point blank range.
Yeah.
Obviously, Kaminsky made a good save, but anywhere either side of him, that's a goal. And they were knocking on the door for quite a while before that, and they were getting into our box and passing it around.
When we
Get
were also, I
dangerous
just
positions.
felt we were, especially that second half, we were making not like us mistakes. We were losing the ball. We were passing it to them. We weren't really pressing as
Sloppy,
effectively. It was all just very sloppy. And I just feel it's a game that, look, we've got to take the other side of it, which is looking at the table, looking at the season so far.
Yeah.
I am so over the moon with where we are.
So,
And we're not going to have the absolute 10 out of 10 performance or a very positive performance every week. Look, it's always disappointing in the moment, and I think you can get carried away with that.
yeah.
But I just feel it was a game. And look, realistically, he scored. I don't think Thierry was having the best game up to then. Afterwards, I think he actually had a really good game.
Yeah.
And it felt like even when he scored, I was hoping that might be the fire in the belly to kind of really start pushing them back and really pushing on them. And I don't really feel we did. I feel like even then it was like, when's the second going to come, personally?
Which it did eventually, but that was us maybe pushing out the pitch a bit more, and eventually them just breaking. And obviously the ball was a good ball in, and he's tucked it away from close range. But it's funny, we talk about like after the game, people getting really down, and you see it online a lot, don't you? People sort of very negative. The negativity I understand from fans that have travelled all that way, paid good money, and then they see the team that
Nightmare to
perform.
get there as well. I think
Yeah, it sounded like the train
travel issues. I think they're
grace, but
Yeah.
but so for those people, I get it. You're going to be really more disappointed than just the fan watching from home. So I understand the sort of sentiment from a lot of the fans when you first go back on Twitter after the game, for example. People that have travelled that way, they're entitled to have their moment, and I get it. I do understand it. But at the same point, we're like you said, we're 12th in the league. We've started really strongly. And we got Sheffield Wednesday. We got 2 weeks now to sort of regather it. Sort of,
Mhm.
you said we looked a bit leggy. That's a chance for us to sort of rest a bit, and also we've got Sheffield Wednesday at home next, so we could already be looking then back at hopefully another 3 points, and then
Mm.
we're nudging ourselves back.
Well, and then also you look at it and say, if we took Blackburn at home, Preston away, and Derby away, and I said you were going to walk away with that 4 points, would you be happy? You would.
You would,
And there's games where we might have lost the Derby one and got a draw against Preston. The realistic side is that's just the way it goes. And I thought international break probably can't come at a better time, because I do think we looked like, as I say, I think the end of the
tired.
Derby game, yeah, I think we
Yeah.
looked tired, and I think that's probably going into it the only maybe criticism I would have towards the starting lineup. I felt it was a game where, and it's such a difficult one, because what I think is that I think a player like Apter, for example, would have been very positive in that game. But then the flip side of that is I look at it and go, I'm saying that now in hindsight, but how the hell could you drop someone like Bree?
Yeah, it's true.
I just wonder, could he have come on?
Weirdly, I don't. Bree started quite slowly in that game. Like, I don't think any of our players were really up to it. But obviously, we're going to go through the players in a second. But I think you're right. I think you can play players too much sometimes.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need to rotate it. And I think I've heard a lot of chat about Kelman and TC aren't working very well together and things like that. And maybe experimenting a bit more up top, because ultimately we didn't have a shot on target in that game. So if we're going to look at it in that respect, maybe it is time to, in certain games, especially maybe like an away game.
And do you think maybe
Fix it.
with that it's time to insert something we haven't seen so far? Because I do worry even Miles. I think he's had a really strong start to the season, but the output side of it's not quite
But you
ideal.
could argue, like with someone like Kelman, for example, he would probably play a lot better again with someone like Miles next to him. So like you could do the little and large combo where you've got him running off flick-ons and stuff.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
that's something a bit different. I don't know. Like it is saying that we've had a lot of joy from the way we're playing. So it's hard, isn't it?
I do look at some of these games as well, and I know it's just maybe looking back to the amazing moments we had last season, but I do think there's games where I've also thought it would be brilliant to bring Godden on in the 70th minute.
I've seen loads of people saying when's he back. Like he is a player that will still bang goals in at that level. And he is a true sniffer dog.
Well, but I think towards the end of games, especially, I think there's moments where he could still be really effective, and just that experience
100%.
and everything towards.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
he's back quite soon. I think it shouldn't be too long, but yeah.
No, I agree. So, yeah, okay. Well, let's go through player by player. I think this is one probably this week that's going to be a bit quicker going through, because I think a lot of them,
Great.
realistically, well, it's a conversation of not great, and some of them it just was that the whole squad played like that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily slating any players directly, but
Yeah.
it was a pretty poor overall performance, which I think brings, when you've got 7, 8 players who are all playing very poorly, it kind of brings.
Well, also, it's a reflection on the whole side as a whole, isn't it?
Yeah. So, let's start off first of all, and I think one that normally we struggle to have many conversations about,
Yeah.
but yeah, Kaminsky.
Yeah, well, obviously, he had a lot more to do in this game. Obviously, conceded 2. I think he was unlucky for the first goal. He literally was down on the floor ready to save the shot.
Hmm.
So the deflection took it over the top. So tough. And the second one again, great ball across, and the guys just levered it in from like 3 yards out. So the good moments for him again, he's still commanding of his box. His distribution's good. He made a really good save from that header that was close range.
Mhm.
Obviously, it was straight at him, but he's still got to be there and make that shot stop. Again, I'm not saying he's like had any clangers or anything like that, and I felt still that he looked comfortable. He, like I say, he had a few ones to sort of semi try and save from long range.
Mm.
But apart from that, not.
He was pretty solid. The goals, there was very little he could do about it, as you say. First one, no keeper saving that, because it's just gone over you because it's taken the deflection. And yeah, as you say, the second one as well there's very little to criticise. I've noticed he seems to, though, and I've seen this in a few games now. There's a few occasions where balls are crossed in and he punches it when he really could just claim it.
You do get some
take it out.
keepers that prefer punching it.
Yeah, and he just seems to have this real want to like punch it. But like in some areas, I think it can be a bit frustrating,
Yeah.
because I've seen him do it a few times now, where if he claims that, it stops their attack and gets us back on the front foot. Whereas he punches it and it goes notoriously, when you punch it out, it will go, because
To
it's the
someone-
way the setup is, to someone else in their midfield.
Yeah.
It can be a bit frustrating. Very minor point.
It is a minor point, but I do get that. And also, with the punching element, I think some keepers do it because they're a bit worried if they try and catch it, it's going to slip out of their hands and it's going to
Mm.
create a bigger problem. So I think sometimes that's a safety first sort of thing. It's a bit of the defenders lumping it out and for a throw in. But yeah, that would be sort of nitpicky, wouldn't it? I guess, but
Yeah, but as I say, overall, it's
not bad at all.
not a bad game. No clangers. Goals weren't his fault. It was what it was. We're not going to be singing his praises in this game because of the way the game went. But yeah, no, overall okay. So yeah, let's move on to Burke.
Yeah, so again, Burke, one that well, I was surprised to see Bell taken out the side. So Burke, I think Burke is still a really solid player, and obviously we've spoken before about him with his fitness and like obviously getting injured in the past for Luton and stuff like that. Jones must have thought that game in particular was sort of suited to him. He is quite a tall boy, so he's probably quite good at headering the ball out, that sort of thing. Again, I don't think he did anything massively wrong in that game. But again, it was a tough game for the back line as a whole because we were quite under the cosh for quite a lot of the game.
I think we were. I think it probably highlighted, and this will be going on to kind of the whole back line. I think we really noticed the lack maybe of, I think, Amari Bell and what maybe he brings. And the fact we had Gillespie, Jones and Burke, who are all the kind of more central centre-backs. We normally in that have a Ramsey, who Ramsey was playing, but wasn't necessarily playing that role. And we normally either have that or Amari Bell. And I think actually seeing that back kind of free of Gillespie, Jones, Burke, I think it highlighted that doesn't massively work. And difficult because it was a game that wasn't, as say, our finest performance. But I don't know.
I think when you look at that three, like you just mentioned, Burke, Jones and Gillespie, they're three players that are a bit more old school, I guess, in the way they defend. I mean, I'd say Jones is a very no-nonsense sort of...
Jones and Burke, I'd say, are very similar. Gillespie's a little bit
better on the ball.
A little bit better on the ball.
But it's quite slow, though, as well.
I'd say probably defensively, not out of the three of them,
the shakiest
defensively as well. So yeah, I mean, I think we can quickly go through Jones. A very kind of similar conversation. I thought he was good aerially, like he always is.
Yeah.
But it just didn't. That whole defensive unit, which is something we're so.
It's what we build our game on.
Conversation every game just felt like it was 6s and 7s, and
it did.
It just didn't feel. Something didn't feel right.
We had. I think there was a few. Even the goal that ultimately came from Small's deflected shot. That was one where it's a bit unlike us. We sort of let the ball drop in our box. They almost passed the ball around our box.
Yeah.
Which doesn't usually happen. We're usually pretty hot on getting close, tight to our men, and sort of clearing it out. And that did highlight again that maybe there was just a bit disjointed at the back. And Jones is always in the middle of that usually. The other thing with Jones is it was disappointing that we didn't really get any like sort of attacking headed chances. Like I say, we didn't have a shot on target. So I think he might have had one header in their box, but on a good day, he's really lethal, isn't he, in their box?
Yeah. As I say, we didn't really. The problem is we're defensively saying it was a poor performance and attackingly it was a poor. It's very difficult to have too much of a chat between a lot of these players. So move on to the final centre back, Gillespie. I felt with him. I think every other game, I think he came with maybe that kind of point to prove. I felt in this game it maybe highlighted a little bit more about why he's maybe a backup centre back. Out of all the three of them, I thought he was probably the poorest.
I think as well, like I said, when he's on it and he's playing those sort of crossfield balls and they're working and stuff, we'll hail him and we'll say, yeah, he's had a really good game. When he hasn't got the opportunities to do that, plus he's having to play a more defensive game. Like I think that defensive element when he gets sort of fronted up, and I've always felt it with him actually because he's quite slow. If someone sort of gets him 1-on-1, I'm never too confident that he's gonna sort of. There's times where he does nick in, but also there's other times where he gets fronted up and that people just breeze past him because he's quite slow.
Yeah, I thought he highlighted this game. I thought he highlighted, look, once again, we're not going to jump on players too much just off one result and one game, but I thought it did highlight some concerns where I look at it and go, yeah, look, he looked more like in that game, a League One defender.
Yeah.
Whereas and look, I'm not saying the other ones were absolutely sensational, but I just felt, 100%. If Amari Bell was there, I'd have felt a lot more solid. Not, as I say,
I personally would have swapped him out for Bell. I know he did have a good game last game, but it's difficult. It's his first full pretty much full. He came on early in that last game, didn't he? So
I can only assume the Bell decision was done off whether it was fitness in any capacity.
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know whether it was tactical. I think it probably was tactical, to be fair, or he just felt Bell needed a rest.
I think it must have been that. Well, as I say,
It is what it is.
yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah,
So let's go on to the two kind of wing back roles.
yeah.
So let's start on Bree.
So Bree, I think we've had such high expectations. Obviously, he's had like 3 games where he's just played out of his skin. So now it's going from that to like a very average game. It sort of highlights that obviously he's not going to be that sort of, you know, worldy player every single game. We
No.
can't ask that of him, to be fair. He wasn't terrible. I think there were moments in that game where he struggled a bit more than he usually does. That might be down to the sort of players he came up against on their defence. Because he's not the quickest, and obviously he's got that really lethal cross, but we didn't really see that in the game, did we?
No, I think it was a game where he kind of went a little bit missing once again.
Yeah,
I don't think probably from what we've seen so far. I think defensively he's okay. He's decent. I don't
yeah.
think that's where maybe his absolute strengths are. I think he almost strikes me as being more of that kind of right midfielder who,
Saying a bit
if
deep.
we want an actor who is going to be much more attacking and very, very, very scarce defensively, Bree is much more offers that attacking role, but does have a stronger defensive presence than a winger would have.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Bree, he's the sort of player that needs a bit of time on the ball.
Hmm.
Like, and if he can get space to really like cross those balls in,
Hmm.
play those nice passes, then he really stands out in the game. Might have been a game that possibly was better suited to an Apter where we could hit on the counter with a bit more pace, maybe. But that, in hindsight, it's very easy to say that.
and as I say, it is difficult because you look at the last 3 games of Bree. Can you take him out?
No, although after that game, you could argue there's a bit more scope to sort of tinker with it. But
Yeah, I think the
yeah,
only disappointing thing I thought towards that was why maybe on the 60th minute we maybe didn't go for a slightly different approach. It clearly wasn't working, and I know we did as in we brought on other subs, but I felt Apter of all the players, he's got that exciting burst who could do something out of nothing. And
yeah,
I thought a bit
I
confused, and I'm assuming there must be a little bit of neck out of joint towards Apter at the moment because he had such a strong start for no reason particularly. He kind of fell out of favour, and now has kind of been on the
he
on
can
the
feel
bench.
it. He's definitely sort of well within his rights to feel a bit sort of,
And I'm not saying this
disheartened.
is like I want to leave the club annoyed, but he must be.
No, he's a young. To be fair, he's a young player, and obviously he's well aware that there's going to be competition. Obviously, Bree coming in and then playing so well, he can fully understand why he's on the bench.
Mm.
But I think he hasn't even come on as a sub in the last couple of games,
Mm.
and he is the sort of player that would make an impact because of his pace and even just catching him on the counter, that sort of thing. So I agree with you. I think I would have expected to see Apt to come on for Bree at some point in that game, but obviously it didn't end up happening.
So let's move on to the final one there then. Ramsey. I personally, I thought of the whole defensive unit, he was probably the best.
Yeah, he played on the left side this week.
Yeah,
didn't
but
he?
yeah, which I thought was, once again, I suppose it's covering what we need there.
Yeah.
As I say, that's where I found the whole decision making of that.
Well, that was strange because I think Bell, when he got moved into left wing back, was really good. Like, he had a good game when he
Yeah.
played at left wing back. So, yeah, interesting.
I think there must have been something Bell-wise, injury, or whether it's kind of not necessarily injury yet, but knowing that he needs a bit of a rest around. He might have an injury, whether
illness or something.
yeah, I mean, there just seems something there because say it was shoehorning Ramsey in there, but I thought he had a pretty good game. I thought he had he obviously had a tough one in regards to Small running up against him a lot,
Yeah.
and I thought he dealt with him really well. He chucked a
think,
few big
to
tackles
be fair,
in.
maybe that's why he put Small Ramsey there in the first place, because Ramsey's got a lot of pace, and we know what Small is like. He's going to run at you all day long. So maybe Jones thought he'll be able to front him up and actually stick with him and sort of catch him.
And I think he kind of did.
did,
He nullified. As I say, I don't think Small had the best game until he scored, and then the game really opened up, and then he got all the space, sprint into it. I think we were handling quite well, and I think a lot of that was down to Ramsey. So
yeah, Ramsey probably over all the back line probably dealt with his sort of one-to-one defence.
his role in that team.
Yeah, what he was asked to do.
Yeah. So, no, I thought a good game for him. So, let's move into the kind of central part of the pitch then. So we'll start on one that I thought we've praised and praised and praised recently, but I thought probably had one of his worst games, and that was Coventry.
Yeah, I think he again is the sort of player that we've seen grow and grow in this as the season's gone on, and he's sort of been a bit more expansive.
Hmm.
We didn't really see any attacking threats from our team, full stop. So he's usually the one that sort of starts the attacks off. He sort of gets to the ball from deep and pushes it forwards. I think we didn't see much of that at all. Plus, we weren't really seeing him sort of man marking people out the game like he has done in the past with Campbell and other players
Mm.
that he's been sort of given that task to. So you're right. I think it's probably one of his weakest games that we've seen from him. Albeit the whole team didn't perform that well. So it's difficult in the midfield when you're under the caution, you're not playing well as a team.
I think it is, but I think the bits I felt disappointed, I thought there were just points where, as you say, I thought he was especially getting a bit run ragged by their midfield. And yes, the whole team's playing poor, but I think, to be honest, like roles like that and what he was doing there were playing quite a big part in that. And I thought, I say, normally he does have such a good foothold on the game, reading the game, and even when he's not spreading passes and maybe playing that more expansive role, he still plays the safe stuff well. And I think there was quite a few occasions where he lost the ball, quite a few
Yeah.
occasions where he just got turned really easily. And I think in that centre of the pitch, they took control there. And I felt like it was a game where he had to take a bit of responsibility for that, because I think it was that.
That's what I was going to say the same thing actually. I think what we found in that game was Preston popped the ball around quite well.
Mm,
I think what you end up finding is if they dominate the possession and they start popping the ball around, especially in the middle of the park, your centre midfielders, so that's Doherty and Coventry, end up running a lot.
mm.
So they end up getting run a bit ragged, and actually then when you get the ball back, it's quite you're already sort of
Yeah,
you've been running hard during the game. It's quite hard to then get your groove going forwards. Yeah, definitely not Coventry's best game by any stretch. But we weren't great as a team.
no, and he's got a little bit in the bank in regards to the
We'll
points
be will
we have seen, and so yeah, we'll let him off on that one. So let's move to the other central midfield partner, and probably not that it was a high bar, but if I was to probably pick out our best player of the game, Doherty. I actually thought and I know we've said about it before, of where he's kind of gone this season, but I thought he was one of the only players in the team who seemed to be showing a bit of passion. He was getting the ball, he was pushing forward quite quickly, and he seemed like one of the only ones who seemed like he was still in what we have shown over the last 3, 4, 5 games, when everyone else had maybe switched off from that. And I think it's very difficult, because if he's the only player who's kind of maybe seems on that level, there's only a limited amount he can do.
Yeah.
We know he's not gonna pick up the whole team and do. He's not in that attacking role that can kind of cause something out of nothing. But I thought overall had a really, really good game, and he's the only player I think probably in there that I'd say I was actually really happy with his performance.
Yeah, so I think if you're an away fan watching that game, if you're going to pick someone out that you think actually they gave absolutely everything, he would be that player.
Hmm.
I think we've said it a couple of times now. He has really shown in the last few games why he is the captain of our club, because he works so hard. I see a few times where we were sort of we were up for a corner, they headed it out, and they were really on the break, and he sprints back. You see it every time, and even if he then just gets to his man and stops, breaks the play up for a second, if the ball then moves forward, he's straight back with it, and he's a player that you can rely on to just give his all. Like you said, if you're a fan watching that from the stands, all you can ask for is for players to give it 100%. I'm not saying the players don't; they all do, but you can really see it with Doherty.
Mm.
Out of all the players, he's one that is tenacious. He never gives up, and he wears his heart on his sleeve when he plays. He gives it everything.
What does it say? From the first couple of games, there would have been only a few players that I would have said, look, I can't see how we can replace this player, and he's quickly becoming
One of those.
if he dropped out of the squad, the impact it would have on us, and for me that really highlights how much of a kind of turnaround it is for him. And as I say,
And on top of that, we were saying how we felt he could be one that would get dropped quite soon because he did not start the season that well. So actually, he's turned it right around, and
Yeah.
if anything, he's become, like you said, one of our most crucial players in that side.
and as I say, it was one of the only performances I could take from that game and say, actually, yeah, I thought you put your shift in,
Yeah,
and if everyone had done that, we'd have been a much different performance.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, really good performance from him. And then probably moving into the final of those central roles, one that I think really went missing in this game, Carey.
Yeah, he did, and
I don't know if it was his fault, whether it was the system, whether it was this.
well,
I think he's got to take some responsibility, because realistically, he is a role that needs to kind of create that space, have an impact on games, and I don't think he gets a free pass, but I don't think we gave him much to...
He does, but also even in I describe him as like a cam, like a centre attacking mid.
Mm.
They have to work hard when we haven't got the ball.
Mm.
So although you're predominantly an attacking player, you still have to give everything when you're up the pitch, but also even tracking back. And he is one that does do that, and you do notice that he does run quite hard.
Mm.
But obviously, in that sort of game, I think, like I mentioned before, because Preston popped the ball around so well, what ended up happening was we had quite a few players just chasing shadows a lot of the game.
Yeah.
And in that, when
He was demoralising, maybe?
yeah, I do, and I
Yeah.
think we've all been there. Like, we've played in football matches where we're just getting
I don't
dominated.
think I've ever heavily pressed around a pitch.
We've all been there. We've seen games where you're not getting your foot on the ball, and all that happens is you end up chasing after the ball, and ultimately that just knackers you out, and it explains really why we end up conceding, because we're just run ragged.
Yeah. With very little respite for when
yeah.
we were on the foot on the ball.
And so a player like Carey, really, he comes into his own when we've got a bit of time on the ball where he's able to get shots away. We didn't see that at all in that game. And when we're not getting those chances or getting the ball up the pitch, he is going to go missing in a way, because his sole job then becomes just trying to track around and get the ball back. So that's what we ended up seeing, was him just trying to work hard to get the ball back, not seeing the part of his game where he's shooting from 25 yards and smashing him in the bottom corner. So
yeah, no, definitely. Okay, so moving on to the final two of the starting lineup. So start off with TC.
yeah, I think again TC always offers that sort of. He is the one that will break the lines, especially up there, obviously on the wide positions. He did that a few times where he was sort of managed to front people up, do what he does best.
Probably earlier on in the game, Rob.
Yeah,
as the game went on.
I think again, as soon as Preston got that proper foothold in the game, again we didn't see much of him, and he got hooked, didn't he? Eventually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he offered what he always offers. I still just always ask a bit more of him in terms of his fitness and just trying to. I think when we
I thought, to be fair,
he probably was a bit better at that.
you say in that game, I think of all the games, actually, I think I've criticised in this game that I felt our press wasn't maybe what it has been this season. I thought he was probably one of the players that actually, especially press-wise and
Yeah.
defensively, I thought he did run quite hard. He was pressing players down really well. As you say, it just was to no avail. We weren't really... there was no synergy. There was no... As a team, we weren't massively pressing. And then when you've just got one person who's running around like a madman, you just end up knackering yourself.
But also, what happens is they pop it around the back 3 or 4, then defensively, but the wingers can press and the strikers can press, but then the ball just gets popped in through the middle. So, like I say, then that is what we ended up doing in that game majority of the time, was just trying to.
I think something we may be overseeing as well. Preston were bloody good defensively. They were very solid, and I was actually quite impressed. I thought attackingly, as I say, as a whole team, they're probably one of the teams we played this season where I thought, yeah, fair enough. You actually played really well. You offered quite a lot in the midfield. You looked... Probably the only bit I'd say they weren't massively impressive was that kind of striker side of things, and the actual kind of taking of chances. But I thought everything from probably defensively through to the midfield, through to the kind of wing play and everything there, I was actually really impressed with them. And I thought, actually, how many games have we said we make a team struggle even if they are good because of how well and how solid we play? And did we just get a bit of our taste of our own medicine in that game?
Probably. And I think as well, like, if you look at Preston as a team, they're not a team of superstars by any stretch. Like, they've got solid players across the board, and I think that's what you see with them. Heckingbottom's got them playing in a solid way.
Well drilled.
They pass the ball well. They're going to create chances. And then, like you said, it's sort of eventually one's going to go in. And that's what happened. And then, obviously, we got pushed out the pitch and conceded the second. But, I was quite impressed with them, to be fair. I thought they played really well.
No. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, no, I'd agree. And I think with it, as I TC, just a full
tough game for a winger.
Tough game for a winger.
Yeah.
Not his greatest performance. Could have done more. But once again, onwards and upwards to the next game. I think an interesting one to finish on with the starting lineup, whereas there's been a lot of not really much to say apart from a poor game. Kelman.
He's getting better and better. I do believe he's getting better and better.
The last game against Derby, the taking down, the kind of amazing first touch, but what he brought in that game of link up was really impressive.
Yeah.
And I thought he kind of carried on to this game, and it was more limited in this game because we weren't free flowing. But I thought out of all of our attacking players, he was the one who was dropping deep, playing off a pass, and trying to create something. And I think the only thing I want from him now is, and I think he so desperately needs just to get people probably off his back, but also for confidence of, is just to get that goal. Because I think actually every other part of his game at the moment is actually coming along really, really nicely.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think as well, like that part of his game, I said before, like people getting on his back about not scoring, but he's starting to really bring other people into the game with his touches, his little flick rounds, his passing. He works hard, and also he does battle as well, which I do like to see in any player. But you mentioned about Doherty probably being one of our best players. I think him and Kelman can walk away with his head held high as well, because I think he had probably one of his best games. Just again, it's like you said, he is a player that needs the he basically just needs someone to play him through. Needs a 6-yarder, just tap it.
I was going to say, even if
What
tapping a
it is.
penalty, like
Yeah.
penalty would be brilliant. Just something to get him off the mark. Because I actually think if you take what he was in the first game through to now, I think we're seeing him come on leaps and bounds,
Yeah.
apart from goal scoring.
Yeah.
And it is, as a striker, it is something he's going to need. Whether, as I say, maybe we can't put all the criticism just on him. Maybe it is a system-based thing where maybe he's not working and quite clicking with TC as much.
That's what I've seen a lot online is people saying that system isn't working now. It's been long enough that we've not really. If you do look at our front line, the goals per game for like the whole attacking line is pretty poor. Whether that's down to the fact we don't create enough, which is partly it, I think, because we tend to score 1 or 2 in a game. It's rare that we get a glut. Obviously, we did against Blackburn.
Yeah, and we do every so often.
We get that every so often.
We
But
did
generally, the
last year. I think we did against Huddersfield, Wicked,
Yeah.
but they were predominantly very close. Nick,
I think the games that we're going to win this year will be a 1-0 or 2-0. They're not going to be 3, 4, 5s generally. But that's not to say that the strikers still can't chip in those games. And I think that's what people are getting a bit frustrated with now, is we're not seeing our front line get many goals. I think that does need to change. That will sort of take time.
but
Especially
is
with
that
Kelm,
quite a
but-
difficult one when we talk about that? Because I completely agree. I think we've got to be seeing more from it, but there's got to be a balancing act, which is we got promoted last year. We've had such a strong start this year
Yeah.
off the basis that we are very, very solid defensively and we edge games, the occasional one where it does really click into play. But that is what we've kind of built our success on. And
Yeah.
the difficulty with it is, what would fans' views also be that we start going a bit more free flowing, but in doing that, we also open up a much more open side to our defence and we start conceding.
Well, you only have to see how when we do push forward in games, we start conceding goals. Like I'm talking like we properly pushing forward once we go 1 down and we need to get that equaliser. But we've seen it a couple of times now where we do look vulnerable when we start really pushing the ball forwards. On the counter especially. So yeah, you're right. It's how radical do you want to be, because we can't just go from overnight being a quite defensive side that get the odd goal to then being like this free flowing, scoring 3-4s, which you do. Some teams are like that. They go gung ho, but they also concede a lot of goals.
And I think the difficulty comes is, I think the only way that argument maybe comes into play to a point where it's a problem, I can understand every person, every fan has their own view on how they want their team to play and what they prefer to watch. And I do completely get that. But I think the criticism in regards to actually a change of system, for me, that only comes into play when we are sitting in the relegation zone where we're massively underperforming. And if you actually say the way we played this year is leaving us mid-table, quite comfortably above the relegation with some really impressive performances in there, I just don't see a world where that is the case. And games like this, we just have to say, yeah, look, it happens every so often. You're not at the races.
It's why I can't get too angry about what the result of the weekend, because I just feel, in the grand scheme of things, we played some bloody tough sides. We're sitting 12th in the league, and really, if we'd, like you said, just going into the second international break, you said we were 12th, with the opportunity to play Sheffield Wednesday and go back up into sort of just outside the playoffs, you would snap your hand off.
100%. And as you say, it's. I think we've just got to take the game for what it was, and it was frustrating, but yeah, and the attacking wise, we have got to improve, but I think that will come game by
It will.
game, and it's not a game that I'm going to judge it too
Mm.
heavily on. So, quickly go over the subs because I think realistically, I don't think any of the subs really made much of an impact.
No, I don't
Tried,
think so.
I think we tried to bring people on. We tried to maybe change the setup.
Mm.
Nothing was quite clicking. So we had obviously Leeburn.
What he's done all the time that he's come off the bench, to be fair, he still is a nuisance. He's big. He will battle with the centre backs. He will try and win flick-ons. But again, we had such a poor foothold in that game in the end, especially up the front of the pitch. He didn't have much of an impact. Like you said, he couldn't.
And I've got very little extra to say to
Yeah.
that. And I think we're probably going to be in the next minute getting through all of these because there's really just not too much. Amari Bell, I think he was coming on to try and maybe bring that side of the more athletic, maybe trying to have a bit more of an attacking presence within that defensive unit. Didn't work, like everything on the day. And I think it was about 10 or so minutes after he came on, obviously we got the second goal, went in, and
Yeah.
I think at that point everyone knew that it was kind of looked like the team kind of down
Playing
form,
out
so,
a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
So same time as him, Harvey Nibbs.
I thought, to be fair, Nibs, of all those players that came on, Nibs I felt ran the hardest when he came on. I do think he still feels like he's got that sort of point to prove. So even when he comes on and we're obviously losing the game, he is one of those players that actually you could see him having an impact. We haven't seen that, apart from Watford where he got his goal obviously off the bench. We haven't seen that big impact from him in terms of goal return. But he does work hard, and he's that quite athletic, tall sort of midfielder that you do when you watch the game, you do see him putting himself about.
Yeah, and I also think with him as a player, we see players who we praise because they come off the bench and they make a huge impact.
Yeah.
I do think with Nibs, I'm not 100% sure that's what he is. I think he might actually be a player who needs to start, needs to
Get
gauge
to the
the
game.
game. He needs
Yeah.
to have half an hour to kind of settle in, and then at that point he reads it and he
Yeah.
does start to kind of ease into things. And I think
We will
look, a
see that.
performance like Preston and him coming on and putting the effort in is only going to help maybe that conversation of the next game.
Yeah.
Jones going, do you know what, Carey, you didn't have the best of games.
We'll
Now
play it out.
you've got your opportunity and rotate round because, as I say, we've always said Nathan Jones won't change a winning team, but in this scenario, you might find there is a bit more kind of adapting, and this could be the opportunity that Nibs needs to
Yeah.
step up. And I think probably Sheffield Wednesday at home, a bloody good opportunity.
Well, also, I think we've got a few. We obviously got the international break coming up. We've got a few players that always go out, especially the Jamaicans. You don't know that one might pick up an injury. That might impact the team selection for the Wednesday game. Who knows? But it would be good to see Nibs get a run. I want to see him get that 90 minutes, which I think is.
I think it's coming.
It's coming pretty soon.
So the final one of the subs that came on at the same time as well, Tanto. I thought he started. I thought when he first came on, it looked like, as I say, TC was maybe tiring a little bit. And when he first came on, I think he had a little run down. He was almost, I think he won us a corner.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, here we go.
Yeah. You're gonna.
And then it just
Petered out a
petered
little.
out. And I don't think he had much of an impact on the game. Once again, not going to be overly critical because he was in that slightly
Game
wider.
come on,
Yeah,
was-
wider. And I
was-
think any attacking player, it was incredibly because I think it relied on maybe a little bit more coming from behind them to have more of an impact on the game.
It was feeding off scraps a little bit in that game, I feel like. Yeah, so again, a player like him's not exactly going to shine when he comes on.
No. So, and then the final one of the subs, and I thought just a lovely one to see. Once again, had no impact on the game. Didn't do anything wrong, didn't do anything right, but so lovely to see. Was Luke Berry coming on?
Yeah, so you could see him come back, to be fair. He's been out for a little while.
I thought we might see what he did there. Was it Barnsley? I think last season when he got the
traction in.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a belter in his locker, to be fair to him, but it's just good to see him back on the pitch. I think he will be a cameo, sort of slightly more bit part player this season just because of his age. And
I think he will, but I think he could be incredibly important, especially in certain games where I think games probably less so this kind of game. I think games where maybe we're winning
on
by
top a
one
little
goal,
more, yeah.
and we need that one player who's going to come on with an experienced
Yeah,
head
I agree.
and maybe just kind of calm the game down, play the kind of dark arts.
Yeah.
I think he's probably where he comes in as his role.
Jones definitely see him as a sort of a player to sort of bring in on like you said, on games that we're, like you said, we're probably winning or 1-0 up or something
Not
like that.
anti in certain situations where the squad side of things is a bit tougher. I'm not completely against him starting
Start.
game. I think he is still a quality player. I don't know if he's quite. He's probably teetering on the level now.
Probably got like a 1 or 2 seasons left in him at
Yeah.
our level, but
But as a squad player and someone who could come into starting lineup if needed, but also in the role that which he did, as I say, still definitely
yeah,
a role there to be done, and probably similar drops into maybe. I think Godden less so of that, but still maybe more down that
yeah,
road. But yeah, lovely to see him come on.
it was nice.
So yeah, yeah, I think that overviews everything towards that quite nicely. Um, yeah, a game to forget.
Yeah, I say we just write it off. I mean, we've got that 2 week break now. Gives the players a bit of a time to sort of recharge. And Wednesday's a nice game at home.
Well, I was going to say, let's move on to, so we'll quickly have a look at that one then. So yeah, so we got Sheffield Wednesday at the Valley. Obviously got international break between.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's your thoughts
Well,
going into that game?
to be fair, like Wednesday have picked up slightly. I think they are a team. They got tanked again at the weekend, didn't they?
But before that, win, draw, draw.
Yeah, and they drew Birmingham as well,
Yeah.
which obviously is a really good result for them. They're not going to be a walkover by any stretch, and I think like we'd be naive to think that them rocking up to the Valley, we're going to just roll them over and they're going to give us the 3 points. They've still got some experienced players. Bannon's always dangerous. They got other players in that team that will. There's a few more like Palmer.
I think what we've probably got with them that hopefully, and look, I do, as much as they picked up a bit of form and we need to respect them,
Yeah,
I fully expect, sorry, it should be a game that we're winning. I think we suit playing a team like that quite nicely, and the reason being is I think we are very defensively strong,
yeah.
and I think on the attacking side they have got a lot of young players in that squad, just nature of the beast.
They've
of
got
that
to break us
situation.
down, and
Yeah, they've got to break
yeah.
us down, but also I think there is mistakes they will make in that team,
No.
and we've got to take advantage. And I think that is a game where we've really got to see our attacking
Well,
unit.
also our home form's been really good so far, and I think we always perform well at the Valley. And as teams go, the teams with lower confidence that are rocking up, we would hope we would have enough to get the result. I'm fully expecting the 3 points, but I'm also not expecting us to just steamroll it.
No, although they have got, I think I saw in the news the other day, the fact that
They've paid
now
their players.
about maybe points deductions. So it might be they're in a when they haven't been paid, and also maybe a points deduction that comes in. Realistically, heads might be
Yeah.
going a little.
Well, also, if you're a player, like the more months that go by and you're not being paid, you're not going to want to really put
I
your
think
all
the
in.
fight is there at the moment, but at some point
Could
it
fizzle
will start to wane. And
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a game we've got to be looking at to almost the perfect opportunity to just reboot after what was a bit of a mere second half against Derby, a game to forget against Preston. It's a perfect platform to then push on. And hopefully, as I say, I fully expect that we should get the 3 points. But you're right. I think the biggest thing is making sure we still respect the fact they're not as terrible as maybe people thought they might be at the beginning of the season.
100%. But what a lovely that if you were going to hand pick a game to come back after the international break, that's probably going to be right up there with the one you want.
Yeah, especially at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Okay, perfect. Well, as I say, I think the final one, we'll bring it up again, the league table. We've spent most of the episode saying now we're in 12th, but after today's results, we're actually in 13th as of now. So
That was devastating.
yeah, not too not too much difference, but yeah, as I say, I think if we're saying going into the second international break and coming up to the 10-game mark, sitting 13th, but I think most importantly sitting 6 points above the relegation in that point as well. I think we've got to remember at the beginning of the season. I'm not saying every Charlton fan, but I think the aims of where we were expecting to be, for me, just a really, really strong start. And I think we've got to look at it as a whole picture rather than these individual performances. And I think as long as we don't see these individual performances becoming a regular occurrence, we can isolate them. And they're learning curves.
They are.
We've got to look at, say, QPR game, the Preston game. They're not always just so overly negative of what maybe they look like in the moment, as long as we do learn from it.
Well, don't forget as well, like they analyse this stuff to the nth degree. Like they'll be watching the game back, analysing what went wrong here and there. So, like you said, we learn from those. We get stronger and stronger as the season goes on. Let's hope. But yeah.
Onwards and upwards. Well, look, let's hope, as I say, we're having a discussion with 3 more points in the pocket
Fingers
out of the
crossed. Yeah.
next game. But international break, obviously, next week. We will still be here with an episode. So do make sure you do still tune in for next week. And we will see you on the next one.